You're getting ready to shoot next morning, and about 10 o'clock at night the director calls and says your leading lady is packing and she's leaving. What do you do? What do you do, Greg? You have to know which battles to fight also. And then sometimes the studio will want to do silly things.
As you continue to age, though, you continue to lose fat in your face, always in your face. What a lot of people do is they try these synthetic fillers such as Juvederm. With fat injections, again, it's not synthetic, it's your own tissue. There's no chance of rejecting or getting an allergic reaction to it or anything.
Hollywood producer Fern Field has done many TV series over the years, and today she tells you how to come up with your game plan for success in Hollywood or any industry. And then how plastic surgeons are using fat from your own body to help you make you look your best. Dr. Tracy Cordray joins us. But up first, producer Fern Field, great to have you back again today, Fern.
Greg, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I think that as a producer, you have to be ready for any kind of situation. So if there's anything to help prepare you for business, that should do it.
Well, you know, my first boss in television, who was the executive producer of Maude, told me that a good producer solves the problems before they happen.
Before they happen.
Right. And as you know, because you've done a lot of producing, once you get the green light on a project, your mind goes into overdrive, and wherever you are, you're thinking about all the things that could go wrong and how to solve them. And of course, the one thing that you would never think of in a million years is the thing that happens, and then you're confronted with it. And the crucial thing in a good producer is really being able to think very fast on your feet, and also to focus on what is the real problem here, and how, you know, how can I
always
solve
have
it?
plan B.
Yes, B and C and D and E.
In fact, I think you have a seminar you do called Producers Don't Cry.
Well, I recently did a seminar for Palm Springs Women in Film and Television based on a book that I'm finishing called Producers Don't Cry, which is based on my experiences in the business. And the way I did it is I gave to the people who registered in advance 5 situations that actually happened, and I asked them to send in their solutions to the problem. Like, for instance, you're getting ready to shoot an ABC movie of the week next morning, and about 10 o'clock at night the director calls and says your leading lady is packing and she's leaving. What do you do? What do you do, Greg?
I can put myself in the position of having the guest, changes, with schedule issues and that, so I can kind of relate.
But you're on a movie of the week.
You're up a creek without a...
Not only that, you're about $1 million in the hole at this point, and more, because you're committed to everybody, and the word is
and the show must go on.
And the show must go on, and you're dealing with 2 major stars, and so we all regrouped. Faye Kanan was the writer, producer, fabulous writer, and Glenn Jordan was the director, and we all met in her apartment. She was sitting in bed with, and what had happened was the script was long. I thought we had no problems on this show. They loved their accommodations in the hotel, which, is fabulous. They loved the dressing rooms. I mean, what else could go wrong?
Yeah.
The rehearsals were going well. The problem was the script was long, and we had Faye had to cut it. So what happened was the actress decided this was not the script she had signed on to do, which basically, I didn't tell you that when I gave you the problem. That's the key phrase. It wasn't the script she signed on to do.
So creative differences or artistic differences at that point?
You can't. I mean, you're supposed to shoot at 7 o'clock the next morning. So we regrouped, and while Glenn is saying, oh, she just has lost interest, she doesn't want to do it, I'm trying to think, how do I get my money back? And I have to be in a position where I can sue her for breach of
That's
contract.
what I was going to say. Okay, I was being nice. I was going to say, at what point do you roll out the lawsuit thing? Because you're kind of thinking...
So she said it wasn't the script that she signed on to do. So, and Norman Lear's the executive producer. So we called Norman, and everybody's brainstorming, and I'm trying to think, how do I get the money back? And finally, I suggested that we go back to the network and ask them for an extra half hour, and go back to the script that she did sign on to do, because if our director is right that she really has lost interest and just wants to leave, then we have a case. because
so they had chopped it down, and she wanted to go back to the full.
Well, she didn't like the new script, so as Faye Kanan said, she counted lines. So
can you tell us who it is, by the way?
No, you'll have to buy the book for that.
Buy the book.
Buy the book. And what happened was Norman Lear went back to the network the following morning. He said, "Tell her not to pack, tell her not to leave." And we asked for an extra half hour, and he got it, which was very unusual because it cut into the news. You know, it went for 2.5 hours. Yeah. And right on that phone call, then Norman said to me, "How much will it cost, Fern?" I hadn't even gone there. I wasn't thinking about it. But I threw out, I figured 5 days we had because our male lead was going off to do a miniseries. So I said 5 days and $250,000. It saved our budget. And the irony of it is that all the scenes that we put back wound up being on the cutting room floor because we didn't need them, and it was, as it was a long movie. But you really, those are the situations that will really throw you if you don't.
And at that point she'd already filmed it, but so she didn't have any say over the final cut then, I take it.
Well, the final cut was amazing. She was fabulous, you know, I mean, it was incredible. So it was just, you know, sometimes you read something and then when you see the finished product, it's a whole other thing.
So, I mean, in a way, does that come down to, well, could it be personality issues as well? I mean, if you got somebody who's hard to work with?
Personality issues are really important because you can have very talented people. If you put together the wrong group of people, it can be a disaster. So you always have to consider the chemistry and how are these people going to relate to each other. And you want everybody to be focused on making it the best possible project that it can be, not on, you know, no egos. You try to keep all the egos away.
So how do you do that though? I mean, it is Hollywood. If you have big egos, how do you smooth all those?
You know, it's instinct, and it's knowing when to make nice and when to take a firm stand. And
when you say we're going to sue you, and when you say
no, you never say it. At least I didn't have to say it. You try to, you know, work things out and figure out. You know, one of the things that I've always said, if you're having trouble with an actor, male or female, generally speaking, it's because there are script problems, and they're hanging out there, and they're hanging by their fingernails, and their faces out there. So you really have to be sensitive to it and listen to it. There are some people who are just inherently, you know, difficult, but I've been very fortunate, and I haven't run into too many of those.
I remember once when I took a class actually at UCLA, I think one of the producers said they learned the hard way that, I forget it was a reality show, maybe it was whatever genre it was, if it was scripted, primetime, whatever, but they found out the hard way. They said one lesson they learned was, you know, the star is the star, and I think they got the boot on the project because they weren't quite getting along. So yeah, I guess you try not to come across too heavy-handed in that kind of a case where you're trying to get along. Well, it's not only
the star, it's the network, it's whatever. I remember I was doing a film for CBS. It was based on a true story, and the network had rejected every person that we had set forth to star as the doctor in the film. And they wanted a certain actor, and we really didn't think he didn't look like our real person, he didn't act like it, etc. And I remember having a conversation on the phone with a very high-level executive at CBS, and he said, "This is who we want." And I said, well, or who the top of the network wanted, and I said, well, the director and the writer and the producer don't want it. And he said to me, "Fern, don't fight that battle."
Wow.
You know, because I would have been history. Even though it was my project, I brought it to
So
them
you had to make it happen.
Yeah, and actually it was fine. It was fine. But it's just, you know, when you're doing a true story, you have certain images in your head, which
was it
you
way
want
off?
to do.
Like it was a guy and
they
put a woman, or something?
No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that bad, but it was just a totally different personality, look, and everything. So yeah, you have to know which battles to fight, also. And then sometimes the studio will want to do silly things, and so you tell them once.
Wait, a silly boss? None of us has ever had a silly boss
well, no,
before.
not silly, but you know, they'll say, like when on Monk in season 1, they had a schedule, and we had already pushed back our schedule because Tony Shalhoub was doing a feature film. And they showed me the schedule, and they wanted to do these 11 episodes straight through. And I said to the executive, "You won't be able to do that because this is a single lead show, and you won't be able to do it." And he said, "We have to do it." And I said it once, I said it twice, I said it 3 times finally. I said, "Okay, it's their money, not mine." And what would have happened when you hire people to do 11 episodes, you say, and we're going to take 5 days off in the middle of it. Everybody says, yay, that's wonderful. They're happy to take those 5 days off. You negotiate your equipment contracts, you know, with that proviso. But we didn't do that because the studio didn't want to do that, Studio Network, whoever it was. And we were on the 5th episode, and Tony Shalhoub said, I can't do this, I'm exhausted. He picked up a phone, he called the network, we shut down. It cost us because now we hadn't made those deals. You know.
I'm sorry, we have to take a break, but we'll come back in a second. We'll find out what happened. We'll be right back. We are back with Fern Field, producer from many TV series over the years, telling us how to make it in Hollywood or your career in general. Okay, so I think we were at the point where Tony Shalhoub was picking up the phone and calling the network.
Yeah, and calling the network and saying, I can't do this, I'm exhausted, I need some time off. So we shut down for a few days, and it cost us money, which it wouldn't have cost us if we had built it into the schedule to begin with. You know, so it's like penny wise and pound foolish. And you have to, if you've got somebody who's experienced and is saying something, you really should listen.
And even when they know better, you know, the boss.
Well,
I think a lot of people are in that position, though, where, you know, they have a boss who doesn't listen or knows better.
And sometimes they're, you know, it's like you get used to doing something because you've always done it that way. Like when you go on location, you used to always do 6-day weeks. And I found out on the first movie of the week that I did 6-day weeks. It's a killer schedule. You know, you're the director and the actors and the DP. You could just pick them off the ground.
Because they're long days too.
They're long days, and it's crazy. So when I was hired to produce Cain and Abel, I said I'm doing 5-day schedule. Also, you're not taking all the crew with you. You're taking your key people. And if you're hiring crew and working locally and working 6-day weeks, Saturday is a double time and a half and double time. You can shoot for 2 days for that same amount. It's only if you have to release an actor or you have some compelling reason why you have to do that. Otherwise, you make your deals accordingly. So by Cain and Abel, I said, we're not doing 6-day weeks, we're doing 5-day weeks. And even Buzz Kulik, the director, said, I never heard of going on location and not doing 6-day weeks. It saved our life because we were able to find locations which went by the boards at the 11th hour. We were able to, you know, work on sets and wardrobe and stuff like that. It was a 7-hour period mini-series that spanned 60 years, and the fact that we were doing 5-day weeks saved us.
What was the toughest challenge you ever had as a producer? Was it any of those situations we've already talked about?
Well, I think, losing your lead the day before you're supposed to shoot. And on Cain and Abel also, we were losing one of our major locations suddenly because the museum had been trashed in Toronto, and they decided no more film crews. And Buzz Kulik said, I'm going to New York to shoot. Well, he couldn't go to New York to shoot. We didn't have the schedule. We didn't have the money. So I had to really finesse that, and I was really lucky. I felt I had made my salary. No, I didn't get the museum, but they had found the exterior of a house which they thought could work. But it wasn't locked down because the woman wasn't really secure about it, our filming there. But I thought, gee, if the exterior of the house is okay, maybe the interior will be good too. And to make a long story short, it was, but she didn't want to do it. She didn't want to have us there, and I showed up unexpectedly, and her 2 sons were there, teenagers, and they happened to mention the magic words. They said, our sister wants to be an actress. I said, she's cast. You know, and she was. She played Ron Silver's girlfriend in the miniseries.
Did it help launch her career? Or
she had a career. They were the second wealthiest family in Canada, so she didn't really need the career.
she had
but she was good. I mean, we wouldn't, you know, we would have done some, but she would have been in the miniseries.
Well, when I asked you during the break about it, you know, how you got into the business, you said that business doesn't exist anymore, that it's all changed. But that's one thing, though, you said you have to really be able to reinvent yourself in this business.
Well, these days it's not only in this business, it's in every business. Everybody is very busy reinventing themselves because companies are going by the boards that we never thought would face bankruptcy or whatever. So yeah, you have to keep
practically whole industry sometimes.
Right, you have to keep reinventing yourself and figuring out. You know, the interesting thing about our industry is that now there are so many different avenues between webisodes and
Internet,
cell phone content and this content and that content and going viral on the internet. So you really have to educate yourself and figure out. But one of the most important, we were talking before the show that I'm aware of this, but Carol Kirshner, who has the Hollywood Game Plan, really made me focus on that. She was addressing panel with writers with disabilities, and I thought she was going to say, this is how you pitch your project and this is how you do, and the first things out of her mouth was, how do you walk through that door so that it makes them want to work with you? And I thought, wow, that is something that everybody should learn, all of us, because I didn't focus on that, but now more than ever you have to understand how to brand yourself and market yourself and present yourself. We know that this industry and every industry is all about relationships,
right.
But really thinking about, and I think young people would be very well served if they think about how are they walking through the door to make them want to do business with you.
So how do you walk through the door to make them want to do business?
Well, it depends. You know, it was interesting because I had Carol come and do a seminar with me when I was doing Producers Don't Cry. She did the Hollywood Game Plan, and we had some high school students and some college students, and she went through, like, from I said the one thing I learned from her was that my resume sucks because she structured how the resume should be, etc. And it's presenting.
You probably don't need a resume at this point. I mean, you've done so many series over the years that.
So it's how you present yourself. It's how you're thinking about yourself. It's what interests you, and it's engaging the people that are listening.
Is it tell them what they want to hear?
Not really. Not really. I think you'll find that most of the projects fly, the ones that you're really passionate about and that you're focused on, and the ones that are at the top of your list of priorities. But the really important thing, and this again is in any industry, is know your marketplace. You know, sometimes I give the analogy, if you're in the clothing business and everybody's walking around in mini skirts, if you're making long skirts down to the floor, you know, you've got to pay attention, and you've got to know
trendsetter.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe, but you've got to know your buyers. The people who are most successful are the ones where you'll tell them an idea, and they'll tell you, oh, I can sell that to CBS, or I can sell that to ABC. I have a nephew who's just turned 17 and has become a reality show maven.
Oh.
He knows what they're looking for and how to do the formats, and he'll go out and he'll shoot the sizzle reel, and he has helped companies sell a number of formats. Oh. He's 17 years old.
Wow, they're starting younger all the time.
They really are. They really are.
Well, we're running out of time, but in our final minute, I also did want to mention, though, you have your Grammar Bee project.
Grammar Bee
what's
is
the latest with that?
Well, it's a competition game show to encourage and promote the correct use of English, and we're looking for partners to be able to develop all the ancillary products that would go with it as a home game, and a possible half-hour television show called the Grammar Bee Challenge.
Because you already had 2 specials,
we did
right?
We did 2 specials where high school students competed for college scholarships, and it was a lot of fun.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye out for the Grammar Bee.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Fern.
Thank you
Always
so
a
much.
Pleasure.
Good to see you.
We'll be right back with Dr. Tracy Cordray. And we are back with Dr. Tracy Cordray, a plastic surgeon in Santa Monica. Welcome back one more time, Dr. Cordray.
Thanks so much, Greg. Great to be here.
Well, so, you know, when you think of plastic surgery, I mean, no offense, but you tend to think something as plastic or fake. But actually, with these fat injections, it's actually something natural from your own body that you use to...
Exactly. It's quite natural. And it's very beneficial, in fact, for those of us, like myself, getting a little older. As everyone ages,
old.
Do you remember when you were, growing up in your teenage years and maybe even up to age 20, everybody's telling you, oh, it looks like you lost your baby fat. Well, you do lose your baby fat. And actually, as you continue to age... I'm
trying to lose it again, lose all the fat, but that's another story.
That's another different show. So as you continue to age, though, you continue to lose fat in your face, always in your face. Maybe not in your thighs, hips, and buttocks, but in your face.
Wouldn't it be nice if it worked that way?
It would be so nice if it worked that way, exactly. But everybody tends to get hollowed out in the infraorbital region, in the cheeks. Your lips become thinner as you get older, and don't we all want luscious Angelina Jolie lips?
So eventually she'll just have thin little lips, huh?
Hers are quite large, or quite puffy, so you know she could stand to lose a little with age, but.
She's got to store for a while.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, what a lot of people do is they try these synthetic fillers such as Juvederm and Restylane. You can inject those in the same locations.
Which we talked about before.
Right, we have talked about that. Yeah. Exactly, last time I was here. So you can inject them in the nasolabial folds, which are these smile lines, the marionette lines here, in your lips to give you fuller lips. But these synthetic fillers are not that long lasting. I mean, there are some that will last up to a year now, which is actually very good. But again, you have to get them done every 9 months or every 12 months. Oh. With fat injections, again, it's not synthetic, it's your own tissue. There's no chance of rejecting or getting an allergic reaction to it or anything. You just suck fat out, usually from the lower abdomen or the inner thigh, which in America, we almost all have a few extra fat cells there. So we suck it out, you then have to centrifuge it down, and you inject it into these areas that I previously mentioned. And you can overcorrect it because the fat will actually resorb somewhat, like depending on, you know, which textbook you read or which study you want to quote, about, you know, between 30 and 50% of the fat that you inject will resorb. But that means if you overcorrect it in another month or so, it will be what it's going to be forever. So,
so it's a one-time only thing?
It's a one-time thing, exactly. So you don't have to keep coming back to the plastic surgeon, although they love that. You don't have to
there goes your client base, you know?
That's right. So you don't have to keep coming back every 9 months or every 12 months to have these synthetic fillers injected.
Now, which do you personally prefer? I mean, would you recommend that to a client instead of something like Juvederm?
I think it's a great thing to do Juvederm first and see if you like it, because guess what? It's not permanent. So once you do fat, though, you better like it because it's permanent. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So if it went really wrong, could you correct it though, or do something, or is it?
You can go in and try to take some out, but then it's all scarred. It's difficult. Yeah, that would be a difficult thing to have to do.
But it's less likely to have complications and that sort of thing, you said, though?
Correct. Much less likely. Less swelling, less redness, bumpiness that you get with the synthetic fillers.
And now this is, well, again, with so many things these days, I guess it can be used all over the body. You mentioned certain parts of the face, but I guess
you can do it in the buttock. Exactly. No, that sometimes, you know, that might take a whole lot of fat, so you have to suck out a lot from the abdomen or inner thigh.
Could you use cellulite? Is that maybe the cure for cellulite? You just centrifuge it and...
Pretty much, I suppose. Maybe that's coming up, you know, in the next 20 years. Yeah. So you can take a lot of fat, centrifuge it down, but that takes a long time because you can only inject it with 1 cc syringes, because what has to happen, remember I mentioned that about 50% of it the body will resorb. So you just have to make sure you inject it in many different planes, tissue planes, which is kind of hard to explain, but there are tissue planes in the body, you know, more superficial than deep, then deeper, then deeper, then deeper, and you just have to keep injecting with 1 cc syringes in many different planes so that it gets good blood supply. Because if you just take 20 cc's of fat, which is a lot of fat, and just go and inject it right into the buttocks, say, it's not gonna get vascularized, and it's gonna become fat necrosis, necrotic fat, which just feels hard, like a hard mass, and obviously that's not the goal here.
So it really takes a skill.
It takes a skill. It takes a real skill, absolutely. And there's a certain technique, you know, soft tip cannulas. We do centrifuge the fat down because there will be liquid in it, oily.
Cannula, by the way, just for people who don't know.
Well, there's Coleman sets. Dr. Coleman came up with the fat injection technique. So there's a set that we use that does have soft tip cannulas. Right, exactly. It's metal. It's a metal cannula it is soft though, and you do just inject it just under the skin, and then, like I said, in multiple different planes, so that it does get vascularized.
How long does something like this take for an average patient?
Well, for the face, I would say, you know, depending if you're just doing nasolabial folds, maybe an hour. If you want to really build up the cheeks, it could take a couple hours, maybe even 3 hours. But all this can be done under local anesthesia. So it can be done under local. Some patients prefer to have some IV sedation or even be put fully to sleep just so they're more comfortable. But it is possible to do this under local anesthesia, so it's minimal recovery period from this.
Yeah, I guess if they're working on your face, though, is that why most people would go under, just because
Some people, yeah, exactly. You could take a Valium and probably be fine with it, though.
And I should say, though, there's actually a reconstructive side to this, too?
Sure there is, absolutely. We can inject it under depressed scars in the face, depressed scars anywhere else on the body, and patients that have had burns, say to the chest, the arm, etc. Sometimes tissue or skin and subcutaneous tissue has been excised due to the burn with tangential excision, and then the skin graft is placed pretty much right on top of muscle, and so it looks very depressed. So what you can do is suck fat out, centrifuge it down, and inject it under the skin graft, or if it's just a scar, you inject it under the scar, and that helps to raise it up to the surface level of the skin. It actually helps it helps a lot in those patients.
Well, we're almost out of time, but I also want to mention, though, too, even in cases of people with birth defects, I think,
Correct.
or certain deformities.
That's right. I mean, there are certain facial deformities that babies are born with. There's a Treacher-Collins syndrome is one of them, where there are grades of Treacher-Collins, but there's, the highest grade one is where children are born without zygomas, which is the cheekbone
without
here.
Cheekbones.
Right, exactly. And so we just, put the cannulas in from basically the preauricular fold and inject fat into their cheeks. And this has to be done, sometimes this takes so much fat to build them up that you might have to do it 2 or 3 times just to get it right. But once you get it there, you're done. And it's not something that the child has to continue to have throughout the rest of his life.
Oh, really? Oh, right. So lifelong.
Right,
well, and that can
exactly.
make it. I mean, it may sound cosmetic, but that can think of what a difference in the quality of life for that person.
What a difference in the quality of life in those children.
Well, thank you very much. Always a pleasure, Dr. Tracy Cordray,
Thanks so
plastic
much, Greg.
surgeon. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time.